I just discovered, my most trusted assistant, the one I depend on more than anyone, is actually my biological sister, whom I lost when I was 6. Ethan dropped this bombshell in an emergency board meeting, leaving the room in a breathless silence. Executives froze, exchanging stunned glances. No one could grasp what was happening. As the young CEO of a multimillion-dollar tech company, Ethan was known for his cold precision, sharp decisions, and a past shrouded in mystery. But with just one sentence, that image shattered. What stunned everyone even more, was that the assistant he referred to, Lily, the brilliant, humble, and capable young woman, was sitting right there. Staring at Ethan in shock, having no idea why she was suddenly being called his sister. They had worked side by side for nearly a year. They'd pulled all-nighters to save projects, confided in each other during the toughest moments. But never, not once, did they call each other family. And then, an old bracelet, a faded photograph, and a quiet DNA result changed everything. No one expected that the most heartbreaking truth would turn out to be the greatest miracle of their lives. This is the story of what seemed like a random encounter, but was, in truth, a beautiful twist of fate. The small wooden house on the outskirts of town was the only place 2 young children ever felt truly safe. Ethan was 6 at the time, and his little sister Lily had just turned 3. Their days together, though humble, were filled with more warmth than anything else in the world. They had no fancy toys or lavish dinners, but they had afternoons spent collecting leaves, and summer nights watching fireflies from the porch. Ethan proudly called himself his sister's hero, and Lily would chirp back, calling him the brightest star in her tiny world. But happiness never lasts long. Their parents began fighting more and more. Shouting replaced lullabies. That night, the house reeked of alcohol, cigarettes, and tension. Their father yelled, their mother wept, and Ethan held Lily tightly in the corner, whispering for her not to be afraid. But then, the worst happened. A spark from the kitchen caught the curtains. In moments, fire raged through the house like a hungry beast. Chaos erupted. Neighbors screamed, sirens wailed. Ethan tried to guide Lily to the back door, but thick smoke blocked the way. In a moment of desperation, he gripped her hand and led her through the burning hallway. But then, the ceiling collapsed between them. Lily's terrified cries rang out from behind the wall of flames, and Ethan's heart shattered. Firefighters found him unconscious near the front door, clutching a singed teddy bear. No one knew where his sister had gone. Some said maybe someone had rescued her. Others feared the worst. There was no body. No trace. Just a haunting silence after the fire. Ethan woke up in the hospital, repeatedly asking, "Where's my sister?" No one answered. Weeks later, he was moved to an orphanage. No relatives came. No one claimed him. He was labeled a John Doe and given a new last name. But in his little heart, he held on to a blurry memory of a girl with soft brown curls holding his hand and pleading, "Don't leave me, big brother." As for Lily, a woman passing by the neighborhood had rushed her to a nearby hospital. Traumatized, dehydrated, and too young to speak clearly, Lily couldn't say her name, couldn't remember her address. With no one to identify her, she became the unnamed girl. After weeks of paperwork, she was adopted by a kind couple in another state. Both children survived. But their memories of each other were buried under the dust of time. The blood bond that once tied them seemed severed, but in truth, it quietly endured, waiting for the day they'd unknowingly find one another again. Ethan never forgot his years in the orphanage. Faces of other kids blurred over time, but the image of his little sister never left him. When people told him that orphans had no future, he didn't take it as a fact. He took it as a challenge. He studied relentlessly, worked nights, and dreamed of a better life. At 22, he launched a startup from a dim, rented room using nothing but an old laptop. He had no one to lean on, no one who believed in him. But he believed in himself, and that was enough. The journey was brutal, filled with failure and sleepless nights, but he never gave up. He built a community-based tech platform. And over the years, that small idea grew into one of the most talked-about startups in the industry. Still, with all the success, wealth, recognition, a brilliant team, his heart remained hollow. He had climbed every ladder, but peace eluded him. One question haunted him night after night: is there someone out there who still calls me Big Brother? Lily always felt something was missing. She was raised in a loving family, never lacked anything material, but a strange emptiness lingered inside her. On quiet nights, she'd lie awake, wondering about her origins. Her adoptive parents were wonderful, but some memories were fuzzy, like dreams she couldn't quite recall. She had odd visions of a boy, a brother maybe, though she couldn't see his face clearly. A part of her past was missing. And she had no idea how to retrieve it. Still, Lily was determined to build her own life. Smart, driven, and kind, she excelled in school and became a natural leader. At university, she led projects, inspired classmates, and earned the reputation of a strong, capable woman. But despite her success, her heart was restless. Was someone out there waiting for her, someone she had never met, but always missed? Ethan and Lily, though thriving in their careers, had never truly known happiness. Ethan buried himself in work, not because he loved it, but to numb the pain. He never trusted anyone, never let people in, not because he feared heartbreak, but because he didn't know how to begin. Every night, after everyone had gone home, he'd sit alone in his office, wondering what it meant to be part of a family. Lily was the same. Surrounded by people yet emotionally distant, she guarded her heart carefully. She feared that if someone got too close, they'd see the deep loneliness she tried so hard to hide. She built a life of independence, but every time she looked in the mirror, a question echoed in her soul: do I truly have someone to share life with? One day, Lily was listening to a podcast about self-made entrepreneurs when she heard Ethan's story, how a young man from an orphanage built a tech empire from scratch. His voice over the radio stirred something deep inside her. It felt strangely familiar, like she had heard it before, long ago. Unable to explain the feeling, Lily applied for a job at Ethan's company, not because of the fame, but because of a powerful, unshakable pull in her chest. She didn't know why, but her heart told her this was where she needed to be. She passed every interview round with flying colors. Her intelligence and quiet strength left a lasting impression. On the final day, Ethan sat across from her. The moment Lily walked into the room, something shifted. Her eyes, bright, yet calm, felt hauntingly familiar. Ethan stared, puzzled. He had seen those eyes before. Somewhere. Somehow, Lily felt it too. Something in Ethan's gaze stirred her soul. Neither could explain it. The interview went smoothly, but both left the room with a silent question echoing in their hearts: have we met before? When Lily walked into Ethan's company for the first time, she didn't have high expectations. She simply thought it would be just another job, nothing special. But what surprised her the most was herself. From the very first days, Lily quickly proved her capabilities. Bit by bit, she rose through the ranks and eventually became a strategic assistant, an essential force within the company. Ethan, despite being the founder and CEO, couldn't help but recognize her brilliance. She wasn't just efficient, she brought creativity, vision, and innovative solutions that even the most senior staff hadn't considered. But what truly impressed Ethan wasn't just what Lily achieved, it was how she worked. She always came prepared, always had clear plans, and more than anything, she saw problems from angles no one else could. During meetings, Ethan didn't just see an excellent employee, he saw someone who could help reshape the future of the entire company. Whenever Lily spoke, no one could argue with her, because she always had reasons, evidence, and logic behind every proposal. Ethan knew, if Lily stayed on the team, the company would go further than he ever imagined. Lily remained humble throughout. But whenever Ethan asked how she came up with her ideas, she always responded with clarity and confidence. Over time, a deep sense of respect began to form in Ethan's heart. Every morning, he found himself looking forward to their conversations, not just about business, but about how she saw the world. And then, something strange happened. In a matter of weeks, Lily became more than just an exceptional employee. She became someone Ethan found himself trusting in a way he couldn't quite explain. Ethan had always been extremely cautious at work. He demanded perfection. Handing off a major project to anyone was never an easy decision. Yet with Lily, something was different. Even though she was still relatively new, even though she lacked years of experience, Ethan found himself turning to her whenever the company faced a critical decision or needed a bold new strategy. He felt that she could accomplish things no one else could. At times, Ethan questioned himself, why do I trust her this much? The answer wasn't just her competence, it was something deeper. Whenever he gave her a major task, he didn't feel anxious. He felt peace. Not only did she meet expectations, she surpassed them. And every time she did, Ethan could only look at her with admiration and confusion. Because even he didn't understand why he could place so much trust in someone who, not long ago, had been a stranger. Never before had Ethan entrusted someone so completely, so quickly. But with Lily, it felt different. She didn't just become a vital part of the company. She became part of his world, someone he could no longer imagine doing this without. Over time, their working hours stretched beyond the usual. They stayed late, side by side through long evenings. But what was unique was the lack of pressure, the absence of any romantic tension. It was something else, an indescribable closeness. They worked quietly, sometimes not even speaking. But the silence between them was oddly comforting, almost warm. They both understood what needed to be done. They respected each other's presence. In those quiet nights, with the soft glow of office lights and the reflection of words on computer screens, an unspoken connection grew. They didn't need to explain their tasks, they only needed a glance to understand what came next. It wasn't love, it was something deeper, a kind of bond neither of them could name, and that was exactly what they both needed at that moment, a companion. Someone who didn't need words to be there for them. Then, one night, as they were working late, Ethan's childhood memories began to flood his mind. He had always locked away his past, never talked about it. But that evening, sitting across from Lily in the stillness of the room, he couldn't hold it back. He began to speak, haltingly at first, about the orphanage, about the lonely nights, the silent tears in the dark. His voice trembled. His eyes clouded. He had never allowed himself to be this vulnerable in front of anyone. Lily listened, stunned. She had never heard Ethan speak like this before. And yet, what overwhelmed her wasn't just sympathy, it was a strange, overwhelming empathy. She didn't understand why, but as he spoke, tears welled up in her own eyes. She felt his pain as if it were her own. She reached out and gently placed her hand on his. It wasn't a romantic gesture, it was something far deeper. A silent act of shared sorrow. As if, without even knowing how, they had both stepped into the same pain. And they didn't need to say anything more. One morning, Lily walked into the office and placed something small on her desk, a simple old bracelet she had carried with her since she was a child. It was the only thing she had left from her early years, a keepsake she had never let go of. To her, it wasn't just jewelry, it was a piece of memory, a fragment of her past. That day, she forgot to tuck it away. Ethan happened to walk by and noticed it. The moment his eyes landed on the bracelet, something in him stirred, his heart raced. There was something about that bracelet, something hauntingly familiar. He couldn't explain it. He had never seen it before. And yet, he had. Somewhere. Long ago, a memory flickered through his mind, faint, blurred, but powerful. Lily saw the look in his eyes and felt a strange sensation rise within her too. A connection. As if, somehow, this small object was waking up something forgotten between them. That afternoon, they sat together after a long day, the office finally quiet. And Ethan, almost without thinking, softly said, "I used to have a little sister." His voice was gentle, weighted with years of silence. Lily looked at him, startled, and then, as if her heart answered before her mind could catch up, she whispered, "Really? I used to have an older brother. I don't know where he is now." The words dropped into the room like thunder, soft, but earth-shaking. They stared at each other, disbelief painted on their faces. Neither could explain it, but in that moment, the wall between them crumbled. A strange feeling, part fear, part hope, rushed in. Something deep inside told them, this wasn't just a coincidence. This was something far greater than either of them had ever imagined. Lily was tidying up a small corner of her room. She wasn't one to hold on to old things, but there were certain keepsakes she simply couldn't throw away. In an old wooden box, she found a faded photograph, a black and white picture that had been worn down by time. In the photo were two children, a boy holding a smaller girl in his arms, both looking toward the camera with innocent smiles. The girl had long hair and a bright face, while the boy had sharp eyes, a gaze that was strong yet filled with tenderness. Lily couldn't help but take another close look at the photo. A strange feeling stirred in her chest. It wasn't because the photo was particularly special or valuable, but because of the boy's face. That boy looked uncannily like Ethan. His whole face, from his eyes to his posture, made her feel like she had seen him before. Lily had a gut feeling that this picture was trying to tell her something, something she couldn't quite explain. She never imagined that this photo could change everything. It was just a small relic from the past, but in that moment, Lily couldn't ignore the strange emotion rising within her. A sudden thought crossed her mind, could this just be a coincidence? Or could the photo be tied to a secret she had never known? The next day, as the two of them sat drinking coffee, Lily couldn't hold back her curiosity. She pulled the photo from her bag, handed it to Ethan, and joked, "Look at this photo. The little boy looks just like you as a kid. I mean, it's almost scary how alike you two look." She smiled softly, not expecting that her words would leave Ethan completely stunned. Ethan looked at the photo, and his heart tightened. It was a mix of confusion and shock that he couldn't hide. He stared at the boy's face, then back at Lily, there was no denying the resemblance between them. But Ethan said nothing. He just sat there in an unsettling silence. Lily looked at him, puzzled, not understanding why Ethan suddenly seemed so distant. She had thought he would laugh and brush it off as a joke, but instead, he looked at her with empty eyes, as if he had just heard something he couldn't believe. Lily didn't understand, but the strange feeling inside her grew stronger. Something was wrong, something she couldn't explain. Ethan stayed silent for so long that Lily suddenly realized her playful comment might have touched a part of his past no one had dared to revisit. That night, when he returned home, Ethan couldn't sleep. Lily's words echoed in his mind, and a heavy sense of unease wouldn't go away. He opened a box of memories, an old container filled with documents he had avoided for years. Inside were tattered, faded papers, copies from the orphanage he once lived in as a child. Line by line, memories of his past came rushing back, overwhelming him with emotion. Ethan's eyes fell on one old document, listing information about children who had been adopted. One line made him freeze: has a missing younger sister, name, Lila. That name, Lila, hit him like a bolt of lightning. It was a name long buried in the corners of his mind, but now, it resurfaced with painful clarity. He couldn't make sense of it. Who was this Lila? Could it really be? Everything became blurry. His memories of the past, long hidden in shadows, now began to resurface, like a curtain slowly being pulled back. Ethan couldn't accept what he was starting to believe. He needed to do something, to be sure. He couldn't just sit and wonder. Ethan began searching for clues, anything that could confirm whether Lily was truly his sister. The more he looked, the more strange coincidences he found. Lily's birthday, the small scars on her body, even the way she smiled, all matched fragments of memories he'd carried since childhood. These things couldn't be coincidences. His heart pounded as he realized, it might all be true, but Ethan didn't want to believe it. He couldn't. He asked himself over and over, could it all be a mistake? Could someone I just met really be my sister? The question haunted him, refusing to leave his mind. No matter how hard he tried to deny it, the signs were too clear. Fear crept into his heart as he realized what he was uncovering. The doubt would not let go. Ethan made a decision, one he knew would bring the final answer. He secretly collected a DNA sample from Lily's toothbrush at the office. It was a private, desperate act, but one he felt was necessary. He knew this step could change everything. Guilt and fear gnawed at him, but he had no choice. He had to know the truth, even if it would destroy him, every time he thought about the DNA test. A wave of anxiety overwhelmed him. But deep down, a stronger voice urged him forward. He had to do this. No matter how painful the truth might be, he needed an answer. Nothing else mattered more than the truth. The day the DNA results arrived, Ethan couldn't contain his emotions. He opened the envelope with trembling hands, eyes glued to the paper. When he reached the final line of the report, his heart stopped. The results confirmed what he had never wanted to believe. Lily was his biological sister. Everything collapsed around him. He couldn't believe his eyes. It was too shocking, too unexpected. The truth had finally come out, and there was no turning back. Ethan sat motionless, numb, unable to speak. Pain and confusion crashed over him like waves. The world spun around him. He didn't know how to face this reality. But one thing he knew for sure, from that moment on, his life, and Lily's, would never be the same again. Ethan sat in his office, eyes staring out the window, but his mind couldn't focus on work. Everything around him felt blurry, unclear. He looked at Lily, and his heart tightened. She, the girl he had trusted, the one he had given a chance to prove herself, was actually his long-lost biological sister. But Ethan couldn't face that reality. He didn't know what to do, didn't know what to say, everything felt far too complicated. He wasn't afraid because he didn't care about her, he was afraid because the truth could shatter the world he had spent so long building. A world he had constructed since he was a child, an orphan struggling through hardship to achieve the success he now had. And now, an unexpected truth had emerged, leaving him confused and overwhelmed. He looked at Lily, but he couldn't see her the same way anymore. She was a piece of his past he couldn't quite reach. He could only watch her from afar, wrapped in feelings of distance and fear. Things were no longer simple. And Ethan knew that if he didn't confront the truth, everything would only grow more complicated. Lily began to notice the clear changes in Ethan's behavior. He was no longer as warm or open as before. Their work sessions, their conversations after hours, all of it became shorter, colder. She didn't understand why, but the sense of closeness she once felt with Ethan had vanished. There was now an invisible wall between them, one that had never been there before. Lily wasn't someone who was easily hurt, but this change left her feeling disappointed. She began to feel like a stranger to herself and to the relationship she had once believed was special. Ethan was no longer the same, the man she could share everything with, the one she trusted most in the company. She started to feel lost, as if something was shifting beyond her control. She couldn't stop wondering, had she done something wrong? Had she said something to push Ethan away? And a vague feeling started to rise in her heart. Did Ethan know something about her that she had never dared to reveal? One late evening, Ethan sat alone in his office, staring at his computer screen. He opened his email. Began composing a long message to Lily, but his fingers stopped midway. Words filled his mind, unspoken emotions, silent fears, the things he desperately wanted to say. But he couldn't put them into writing. He couldn't tell her the truth about their connection. The subject line read, "My dear." But Ethan couldn't go on. He deleted the vague words, leaving only a draft. He couldn't bring himself to write that she was his sister. He couldn't unveil the truth, even though his heart ached to share it. He was afraid that if he said it out loud, everything would change, and he wasn't ready for that change, and so, the email remained a draft. A message left unsent. A truth left unspoken. Ethan didn't dare send it, even though deep inside, he knew he couldn't keep it hidden forever. But he was terrified that once the truth came out, things between him and Lily would never be the same again. One morning, during a tense meeting where everyone was discussing data and strategy, Ethan almost accidentally called Lily by the name Lila. It was the name he had come across while digging into his own past. He couldn't control his emotions in that moment, and the name Lila slipped from his lips like an unconscious reflex. The entire meeting room fell silent. All eyes turned toward Ethan, and Lily looked at him with confusion. She had never heard Ethan call her by that name before. She froze, overwhelmed with a sense of disorientation. Why had he called her that? Her eyes met his, but Ethan said nothing more. Lily's heart filled with confusion and unease. She couldn't understand why Ethan would call her Lila. It was a name she had never heard before, and certainly never expected to be called. But what happened next made her realize something strange was going on. Maybe this was the final clue to uncovering the truth. the uneasy feeling didn't leave Lily. She decided she had to find the truth. One day, she returned to the orphanage where she had grown up, hoping to uncover details about her past. She met with the elderly manager of the orphanage, a man who remembered many of the children who once lived there. She brought with her an old photo and a worn bracelet. When the manager saw the bracelet, he froze. This belonged to the boy named Ethan. He gave it to his little sister, the man said, his voice softening. Ethan and Lila, they were separated after a terrible accident. Lila was adopted and disappeared. But this bracelet, I remember it clearly. Lily couldn't believe her ears. Everything started to make sense, like the pieces of a shattered puzzle slowly coming together. She couldn't hold back her emotions. She had always felt a special bond with Ethan, but now, the truth was finally starting to emerge. Her heart raced, full of both fear and clarity. She couldn't stop thinking about what she had just heard. Could this really be the truth? That same day, Lily returned to the office with a paper in her hand, the results of a DNA test. She had submitted her sample and compared it with Ethan's, and the result was undeniable: she was his biological sister. She handed the document to Ethan, her eyes filled with certainty. When Ethan saw the results, he couldn't hold back his emotions. All the confusion, fear, and long-hidden truths finally came to light. There was nothing left to hide. The doubts were now confirmed. Lily was the sister he had spent so many years searching for. They stood there in silence, staring at each other, not knowing what to say. The feeling was a mix of confusion, pain, and also profound relief. The truth had come, and now, nothing could stop them from facing it. The room was silent, no more sound of keyboard clicks or hurried conversations. All that remained was the quiet between Ethan and Lily. They sat across from each other, eyes no longer hesitant, no longer avoiding. There were no more roles, no more titles, no longer boss and employee. Just a brother and sister, two people who hadn't seen each other for years, yet shared a bond that words could never fully capture. The atmosphere was filled with stillness. Everything that had happened, all the emotions they had endured, seemed to pause in this one moment. Ethan looked at Lily, his gaze full of surprise, confusion, but also warmth, a kind of love he could no longer hide. As for Lily, all the unspoken words, the hidden feelings, poured out in her eyes. Between them, there was no more distance, no more fear, only truth, and the love of a family lost and found. Ethan spoke the question, almost as if needing to hear it aloud to believe it. "You're Lila, aren't you?" His voice trembled, as if it had taken him a lifetime to say that name. Lila, his sister, the one he had thought was lost forever. Lily simply nodded, saying nothing, but tears streamed down her face. They weren't tears of pain, but of release, of joy after so many years apart. Unable to hold back her emotions, she rushed into Ethan's arms. They embraced tightly, as if they never wanted to let go, as if this hug could erase all the years of separation, as if this embrace would last forever. In that moment, no more words were needed. They were no longer strangers, no longer lonely souls. They were family, a family that had found each other after so many years. Lily began to tell Ethan about the dreams she had as a child. In them, there was always a boy who would hold an umbrella for her during storms, shielding her from the cold. She remembered clearly the warmth of his arms, the peace she felt beside him. Those memories had always lingered inside her, but now, looking into Ethan's eyes, everything rushed back. Ethan couldn't hold back his own emotions. He remembered the promise he'd once made to himself as a child, "I'll come back for you." He hadn't been able to fulfill that promise right away. But now, seeing Lily in front of him, he knew he had finally kept his word. They had found each other, no matter how long and difficult the journey had been. Tears streamed down their faces, but they were tears of relief, of joy. Every memory, painful or sweet, was now part of a story with a beautiful ending, but even though they had found each other, both Ethan and Lily couldn't escape a sense of regret. Ethan felt guilty for not searching for Lily sooner. He blamed himself for not doing more, for letting time slip away without finding her. He had always believed he would, and yet the years passed without success. Lily cried too, but not from pain. Her tears were for missed chances, for not realizing the truth sooner. For not searching for the brother she never knew was so close all along. But then they both laughed, a light, comforting laugh. They said to each other, "We found each other, even if it's a little late." And in that moment, all the regrets, all the self-blame, all the years gone by, became the past. They no longer needed to change what had already happened. They only needed to live fully in the present, in the joy of having found their loved one again. The news of Ethan and Lily's relationship spread quickly throughout the company. An internal letter from Ethan was sent out, and every employee read his words, "Today, I'm not just the CEO. I am a brother who has just been reunited with his family." The entire company was stunned. No one could have imagined that the strong, powerful leader had such an emotional and extraordinary family story. Everyone was deeply moved, and in that moment, admiration for Ethan went beyond his business success. It extended to the genuine love he held for the sister he had lost for so many years. The company was no longer just a workplace, it had become the witness to a beautiful family story, a place where love and reunion had become part of the culture. On the day of the company's new project launch, beneath the stage lights, Ethan and Lily stood side by side. All eyes were on them, but it was no longer about the spotlight or public attention. It was about them, and the light of family between them. When everyone expected a formal handshake, something unexpected happened. Ethan and Lily embraced each other, right there on the crowded stage, under the soft lights. It wasn't just any hug, it was a hug that changed everything. A hug of family, of true love, of reunion after so many years apart. Everyone watching was moved. That hug wasn't just a gesture between two people, it was proof of the values we all seek in life: family, love, and connection. After finding each other, Ethan and Lila decided not to let their story end as a personal chapter. They wanted to turn their pain and happiness into something more meaningful, something that could help other lost children in the world. With shared determination and a united heart, they founded an orphan support fund called Finding Home. This fund was more than just a charity, it was their promise, their commitment to ensure that no child would have to endure the loneliness and abandonment they once felt. A portion of the company's profits would be set aside to help orphan children reconnect with families, or at the very least, to provide them with a safe and loving home. Ethan and Lila knew that this initiative wasn't just about financial help, it was a way to share their own story, to let children know that even if they weren't born into a family, someone could still come into their lives and love them like family. Not long after launching Finding Home, the story of Ethan and Lila's emotional reunion was turned into a short video, capturing the powerful moment when the siblings found each other after years of separation. The video quickly went viral across social media, moving millions of people who paused their busy lives to witness the deep bond between the two. People shared the story, not because Ethan and Lila were famous, but because of the powerful message it carried. Stories about family, love, and sacrifice have a special strength. They speak directly to the heart. Millions of viewers shed tears while watching, touched by the warmth and emotional gravity of the moment. Strangers, people who had never met Ethan or Lila, could still feel the invisible connection between the siblings, and that was what made their story extraordinary. The video wasn't just about a reunion, it carried a greater message: family is immeasurable. It cannot be erased by time or distance. And if love is strong enough, family will always find its way back together. One day, Ethan and Lila decided to return to where everything had begun, the orphanage where they were separated as children. The place still stood, unchanged by the years, but for them, it had become a sacred part of their past they needed to revisit and honor. As they stepped into the orphanage grounds, they were overcome with emotion. The old walls, the cramped rooms, and the familiar faces of the caretakers who once looked after them, it all came flooding back in that single moment. But it wasn't just sadness they felt, it was gratitude. They had once been lost children in this place, but now, they had found each other. They were no longer alone. What they felt wasn't regret, it was healing. They had come back not to relive the past, but to draw strength from it. It had been a difficult journey, but they had made it. And above all, they knew that everything had happened for a reason. Sometimes, life takes us on unexpected paths just so we can find the missing pieces of ourselves. In an interview, Ethan sat in front of the camera, his gaze never leaving Lila, who sat beside him. When asked what had helped him grow and succeed, Ethan didn't hesitate to say something deeply emotional. "Without her, I wouldn't be who I am today." He wasn't talking about his career, or his company, or the things he had built. He was talking about Lila, his long-lost sister who had become a source of quiet strength for him. "She taught me how to love, how to trust, and how to live more fully each day," he continued. Lila sat quietly, smiling softly. She didn't need fancy words, just heartfelt truth was enough. She replied, "Without you, I would have lost faith in life." And with those words, not only Ethan but also everyone watching the interview was moved. Because in their story, family wasn't a distant ideal, it was the core of everything that kept them going, though life had taken them down separate paths. Though they had lost so many years, Ethan and Lila had found each other at exactly the right time. They didn't let past mistakes haunt them. They didn't let pain stop them. Most importantly, they found each other when both were finally ready to love and to heal. The years apart weren't just a loss, they were part of the journey that made them stronger. Their reunion wasn't the end of a sad story, it was the beginning of a new one. A story of love, of healing, and of family. Because sometimes, life isn't just about finding each other, it's about finding each other at the right time, when we've grown enough to truly cherish what we have. In the end, the story of Ethan and Lila is not just about finding family. It's a powerful message about the strength of love and the healing power of human connection. As Lila later said in an interview, family isn't always beside us. But if it's meant to be, they'll find their way back, one way or another. It's a reminder that no matter where life takes us, no matter the challenges, if we believe in love and in connection, family is never truly lost. It will always find its way back, often in the most unexpected moments, in the most touching stories, and that's where we discover the most important part of life, family.